What's happening? Thanks for joining me as always. It is much appreciated on this Tuesday morning. Before we get to the New England Patriots and whether or not they're stuck in wide receiver jail, we do have some breaking news about the Celtics. Shams Charania reporting that Kristaps Porzingis is returning. Game 1, Thursday night. Kristaps played in a couple of scrimmages the last 3 days. Shams says he has no idea on how many minutes that Kristaps will get. The Celtics don't really have a clear idea as to how many minutes Kristaps is going to get on Thursday night, but the expectation is he will be out there on the floor, and I really can't say enough about the huge impact that Porzingis could have on this series, offensively and defensively. Defensively, we're talking rim protection, coverage on the drop, where he can contest threes and he can also contest at the rim. His ability to pick and pop, his ability to create mismatches in the post and from the mid-range off of switches. He is a big-time difference maker for this offense and for this team. And if he can give you 20 to 25 good minutes, good quality minutes, if Porzingis can give you that, then you feel great about the Celtics' chances of winning this series and hanging banner 18 up in the rafters. We'll have more on the Celtics and Mavericks later on in this podcast, but let's get to the Patriots now that I gave you that breaking news. I don't think there's much of a debate that the Patriots wide receiver room is better this year than it was last year. I don't think there's much of a debate that the wide receiver room, especially 2 through 5, is better this year than it was last year. We went through the offensive depth chart a week or two ago on this podcast. We went player to player, and I believe this wide receiver room is better. But we have also discussed that the Patriots need a wide receiver one. No doubt need a wide receiver one. Somebody who can be seen one-on-one coverage, beat the guy opposite of him. The 3-by-1 that we've talked about, right? If you're going to have 3 receivers on one side, 1 receiver on the other side, can that 1 receiver beat that coverage? And so that's what the Patriots need, a bona fide wide receiver number 1. And every time a wide receiver 1 signs a contract, even when a wide receiver 2 signs a contract, every single time that happens, it impacts the rest of the market. Every single solitary deal. And yesterday, we gave you the breaking news that Justin Jefferson had agreed on a contract extension with Minnesota. Now, I never thought Justin Jefferson was really a possibility for the Patriots. I know some people talked about that. There were content creators that threw that up against the wall in some delusional trade scenarios. I never thought for 1 second that the Vikings would deal Jefferson. It doesn't make any sense. They were in win-now mode. And yes, you can look at the quarterback now with J.J. McCarthy because Kirk Cousins left via free agency. But Minnesota's team is built to win right now in the next 2-3 years. And Jefferson is a major part of that. So I never thought Jefferson was going to be a Patriot. But Jefferson's contract impacts the rest of the league. Jefferson's contract impacts that position across the board. Mike Florio wrote about Jefferson's contract at Pro Football Talk yesterday. And here's what he wrote. Jefferson's new contract, which pays $35 million per year in new money, gets there without fluff or BS on the back end. So no funny money. Really not much funny money in Jefferson's contract extension. The deal pays $88.743 million fully guaranteed at the signing. The practical guarantee is $95.743 million. Since it can be avoided only, he wrote avoided, meant voided only if he's cut after 1 year. It's far more likely he'll definitely be paid $125.743 million over 4 years, since $14.257 of his year 4 pay becomes fully guaranteed after only 2 years. So ipso facto, I use that every once in a while now. Try not to use it too much because one of the listeners pointed out, holy crap, Nick, use it a lot. So this is the biggest contract, as Florio wrote. Biggest contract ever given to a non-quarterback with no back-end fugazi numbers aimed at pumping up new money average. You know, a lot of times we get these NFL contracts, these figures leaked. They're leaked by agents, and they're leaked by agents to try to create more money was given to the player. Such and such signs a $150 million contract. You look at the details, you look at the facts of the deal, and you figure out that guy's not making that money. He's not even anywhere close to that kind of money. There's a lot of funny money in the NFL. As Florio wrote, a lot of fugazi numbers at the end of contracts that inevitably get voided. But when the contract is reported, you go, wow, that's a lot of money for that guy. That guy got the bank, right? They backed up the Brinks truck for that dude. Well, with Justin Jefferson, the Vikings literally backed up the Brinks truck. This is a legitimate contract extension. No funny money, no fake money really at the end of the deal. It is what it is. Brad Spielberger quote tweeted Mike Florio, and Spielberger is the director of football admin at Grand Central Sports Management now. He used to do contract projections for Pro Football Focus. Spielberger's quote tweet about Jefferson's contract was very real. This is a way bigger jump to the wide receiver market than it even appears. David Lombardi, who is the beat writer for the 49ers, obviously he has a vested interest in all of the wide receiver contracts given out this offseason because of the Brandon Ayuk situation out in San Francisco. Lombardi posted this. Jefferson, most fully guaranteed money, wide receivers. When you look at this, Justin Jefferson is getting $88.7 million fully guaranteed. The second most fully guaranteed money at that position is $52.5 million for Tyreek Hill. There is literally more than a $36 million gap between wide receiver 2 and now wide receiver 1 in fully guaranteed money. This Justin Jefferson contract blows every other wide receiver contract out of the water. It's not even close. Minnesota walked to the table and literally dumped not just the bag, but all of the bags on that table for Justin Jefferson. And this has an impact. It reminds me of the Deshaun Watson contract with the Cleveland Browns, when the Browns literally gave Deshaun Watson like $200 million or more in guaranteed money, especially dealing with Watson's situation that he was dealing with off the field at the time, right? Cleveland gave Watson hundreds of millions of guaranteed dollars. And at the time, teams went bananas because they knew that Watson contract was going to impact their quarterback contract. Everybody knew that. As soon as that deal was signed, Deshaun Watson's guaranteed money was going to throw off the guaranteed money with every other quarterback in the league, and the same could be said for this Justin Jefferson contract. CeeDee Lamb is looking at this Jefferson contract right now and saying, oh, okay, so instead of me aiming for Tyreek Hill guaranteed money at like $50 million, I'm now aiming for almost $90 million guaranteed. It's almost doubling the guaranteed money that these wide receivers now are going to be looking for. Brandon Ayuk's asking price just shot through the roof, as did CeeDee Lamb's. That's what we're talking about here. And now we have the Patriots, who are in need of a wide receiver 1, looking at this marketplace. Now, if you were interested in trading for Brandon Ayuk, you not only have to give up those assets, but instead of giving up $55 million guaranteed, let's say, now you're looking at giving up $90 million guaranteed. That's a whole new ballpark. That's a completely different world. That's like if you were house hunting and you were looking at a house for $400,000, and then all of a sudden you went back and looked at the house a month later, and now the asking price was $750,000. That's a whole different universe. That's the impact of the Jefferson contract. That's how Justin Jefferson impacts your New England Patriots. Because of that contract he signed with the Vikings, now the Patriots, if they want to play ball and go out there and get a bona fide veteran wide receiver 1, they're now looking at paying that kind of Jefferson money versus the Tyreek Hill money. Every single wide receiver 1 deal is impacted by Justin Jefferson's contract. And if we thought this market was booming. Now it is exploding. And some would say that it's out of control. This Jefferson contract, to me, is out of control. And I love Justin Jefferson as a football player. Best wide receiver in the game right now. But to pay him more than $35 million guaranteed, more than the second most guaranteed money at the position, is outrageous. It's simply outrageous. It's again, similar to what Cleveland did with Watson. So now if you're the Patriots, if you're any team looking to go get a wide receiver one, that task just got much more difficult. Because not only are you giving up the assets it's going to take to acquire that wide receiver, whether it's, CeeDee Lamb or DK Metcalf or Brandon Ayuk, any of those guys, right? Not only is it going to take the assets to trade, it's also going to take much, 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 much more money than you anticipated. And I know some of you might say, who cares, Nick? It's just money. To a certain point. To a certain point. It is just money, and it's not my money. However, I mentioned this during the offseason when people wanted the Patriots to go out and sign Christian Wilkins. And I said, well, if you go out there and you sign Christian Wilkins, you know who's paying attention? Christian Barmore. And if you're going to pay Wilkins the amount of money it's going to take to make him a Patriot, you're going to have to pay Christian Barmore that much more money, because the guy who's been in your locker room, who's been playing for you, who's invested his time towards your football team and continues to develop within the program, you're going to have to pay that guy even more money than you were planning on, because you just went out and signed Christian Wilkins. Everybody in the locker room is looking at how much money guys are making. And if you don't think that happens, you're being naive. There's no doubt everybody is fully aware of how much the guy across from them makes. And so if you bring in somebody like Brandon Ayuk and you pay Ayuk, I don't know, let's say he makes a little less than Justin Jefferson. Let's say you pay Ayuk $75 million guaranteed. Every player in that locker room is looking over. And when it becomes their day to get paid, they're going to want to get paid at the very tippity top of the market. You can only pay so many guys at that top of the market. So yes, these contracts impact the Patriots. And if the Patriots wanted to do business at wide receiver one and try to get a veteran in-house, it got difficult. And it not only got difficult, it got more difficult than before. And then you also think about this. All of these wide receivers are signing contract extensions because these teams don't want to let these guys walk. These teams don't want to trade top-tier receivers. When I was on 98.5 The Sports Hub last week, I mentioned this. If you're San Francisco, you want wide receiver one. And if they have to pick and choose between Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, I believe they're going to choose Ayuk. I think it's much more likely you see Deebo get traded this offseason still than you would see an Ayuk deal. Because what these teams are telling you is they want their young, talented wide receivers. And they're going to keep those guys. They're not looking to deal them. I know Tyreek Hill got dealt by Kansas City. I know A.J. Brown got dealt by Tennessee. But what you're seeing over the last year or two is that these teams are more willing to give up big contracts to wide receivers to keep them within their franchise. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, the list goes on. Jefferson just yesterday. And so there's not many guys available who you would classify as wide receiver ones. And if those guys become available, like Tyreek Hill, you have to give up a king's ransom to acquire that guy. You not only have to pay that guy the money, but you've got to give what? Miami gave Kansas City 5 draft picks. They gave up 5 picks for Tyreek Hill on top of paying him big-time money. And at a certain point, you have to ask yourself the question, is it worth it to go that far to try to get a wide receiver one? Or do you look at other ways to get that wide receiver one? We'll get to that in a minute. First, I remind you, this podcast, this program is brought to you by Warzone Paintball and Airsoft. Kelly and I went out there last Saturday in North Kingston. It was a beautiful day. We met Jeff, the owner. The guy rocks. He will take care of you. If you're interested in paintball or airsoft, go check these guys out. Warzone Paintball and Airsoft. They've got more than 30 acres of land. And if you're new to these games, don't worry about it. Warzone Paintball and Airsoft, it's low-key, it's casual. They will work with you to make sure that you are comfortable. They have rules that really fit new players. It's a fantastic, fantastic place. Again, 6 and up. Every age group, paintball and airsoft. If you want to check it out, jeans, good shoes, long sleeve shirt, make sure you give them a call, 401-228-6366, 401-228-6366. If you have a younger child, right, 6+, and you want to do something different for their birthday, Warzone throws these parties. They do a great job. So, again, check them out. And when you swing by, let them know that the Nick Cattle Show sent you. All right. So, because of the Justin Jefferson contract, we now have to ask what happens with the next wide receiver 1B / wide receiver 2. You look at Calvin Ridley. Again, every single contract impacts the next contract. Calvin Ridley makes the 4th most guaranteed money now at wide receiver, $47 million. That's why, given perspective, when you look at this, $47 million guaranteed, giving Calvin Ridley, they paid Calvin Ridley like he's the 4th best receiver in football. It was an overpay, no doubt, right? Tennessee overpaid for Calvin Ridley. But when you look at these other contracts, you look at these other players, you could say Calvin Ridley is really a 1B. Here in New England, no doubt he would have been a 1. In Tennessee, he's likely going to be a number 1. But is he a top 10 receiver? I wouldn't say so, right? He's not a top 5 guy, but his contract gets the bump. And so now you start to look at other receivers who might be available, who might be on that fringe. They're not really wide receiver 1s. They're kind of stuck in the middle, right? Between 1 and 2. Don't really know how to categorize those guys. Those contracts are getting a bump. Think about T. Higgins. Is T. Higgins a number 1? He's not a number 1 in Cincy. He might be a number 1 for other teams. How much are you now paying T. Higgins? Are you paying T. Higgins Tyreek Hill money? Are you paying T. Higgins more than Tyreek Hill? You likely are because of this Justin Jefferson contract. The Jefferson contract, $36.2 million more in guaranteed money than Tyreek Hill. So now if you thought you were going to pay T. Higgins, who might not even be a 1A, you were going to pay T. Higgins, let's say $55 million guaranteed. You're now looking at paying, T. Higgins $70 million guaranteed, $75 million guaranteed. It impacts everybody. So if you're the Patriots, here's the deal. I think it's much more likely that you see the Patriots go after wide receiver 1 in the draft versus acquiring one. With the assets that it would take, with the money that you now have to pay with this market exploding, I think it makes more sense for the Patriots to look at the draft and say, we're going to get our wide receiver 1 through the draft. It's similar to the quarterback question almost going back a few years ago when people really started to appreciate the idea of playing your quarterback on that rookie deal because you could spend money elsewhere. Kind of similar to that, right? If you're going to pay your quarterback now $50 million a year, are you going to pay your wide receiver $30 million a year, $35 million a year? You got to think about it in those terms. So a wide receiver rookie scale contract, the value of that contract, the ability to get a true number 1 wide receiver, if you can land one, if you can land a bona fide number 1 in the draft, the value of that wide receiver contract now, given what just happened with Justin Jefferson, the value of those rookie scaled contracts at wide receiver, the value also absolutely explodes. The market with the money explodes for these veteran guys, but the rookie scaled value at wide receiver, those contracts, that value also explodes. So if you're the Patriots, you're likely looking at the draft. You're likely looking at, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're not going to give up a first-round pick and pay somebody $80 million guaranteed. Not at wide receiver. We're not one player away, right? Everybody would agree. You're not a wide receiver one away from winning a Super Bowl. So you're not going to give up draft assets and $80 million guaranteed to bring in Brandon Ayuk. At least I don't think you're going to. You're not going to give up that number one and the money. You're more apt to look at it and say, we're going to keep the picks. And if we finish if we finish with a top 5 to 8 pick next year, maybe we entertain drafting a wide receiver. Maybe we do that. Now here's the challenge with that. If the Patriots are not right at left tackle, if Chuks Okorafor can't play left tackle, if Caden Wallace cannot transition from the right side to the left side, I'm guaranteeing you this right now. In 9 months, time, we are all going to be talking about what will the Patriots do in the first round. Are they going to draft a receiver or are they going to draft a left tackle? That is going to be the question. And that is going to be the challenge for the Patriots. If left tackle doesn't work out this year, they will go into next year's draft still needing a legitimate left tackle and a wide receiver one. And just like we were asking the question about this year's draft, can you land a franchise quarterback and a legitimate left tackle? Can you land a franchise quarterback and a wide receiver one? We will be asking that same question as far as can you get 2 premier positions filled adequately enough through one draft next year like we were this past year. That's going to be the challenge. Perfect world, the left tackle works out. Perfect world, Chuks Okorafor, Caden Wallace, one of those guys holds the water on the left side. And if they can do that, then you go into next year's draft thinking wide receiver one is one of our top priorities. And we're not even going to get into the defense because the defense has a lot of free agents coming up. But so that'll be the challenge. If left tackle doesn't work out this year and you're going into next year's draft, the conversation is going to be tackle versus receiver in that first round. That's going to be the conversation that we have from January to April of 2025. Write it down. There's another angle to this. Before I get to that, don't forget, first time today, I ask, give us that like. More thumbs up means more eyeballs. If you give us that thumbs up, it builds the community. It takes a second of your time, but it means a lot to us. So give us that like on the YouTube channel. Press that thumbs up. Also subscribe and get notified. Subscriptions help an awful lot. Trying to get to 3,500 subscribers. Like, subscribe, and throw a comment in as well so I can read your comments. I went back last night, took a look at some of the comments that were made. A lot of fun stuff happening in there. So like, comment, subscribe, and on Spotify and Apple Pods, I also see your comments, your ratings, your reviews. I appreciate those. Rate and review at those spots as well. That's how we continue to push forward and survive. Another angle. I saw some people say, well, the Patriots' prior regime saw the market, and man, they made the moves they made. Like if you're talking about Bill Belichick, if you're looking at the wide receiver market and you're noticing that the wide receiver market is exploding, then you need to go get one of those guys, right? You need to find a way to get a young wide receiver one. And so some would say, the Pats' prior regime saw this market and they made the moves they made. It's a fair point. But I did see a post from Greg Bedard that I disagreed with. Bedard ended up posting, Bill Belichick saw the wide receiver market exploding, so he purposely avoided good receivers for years. I mean, he gave Devontae Parker an extension. I respectfully disagree with my friend Greg Bedard on that. I don't think Bill Belichick purposely avoided good receivers for years. I think Bill Belichick tried to draft good receivers and swung and missed. Belichick thought he had that guy in N'Keal Harry. Nope. They thought they had that guy in Tyquan Thornton. Nope. So I don't think Belichick avoided the position. I don't think Belichick avoided the opportunity to add good receivers via the draft. He just screwed up the evaluations. He picked the wrong guys. If you pick Debo or A.J. Brown instead of picking Harry, then we're talking about a whole new world, right? If you're drafting DK Metcalf, we're talking about a whole new world. I also think that Belichick just straight up was stubborn. He was stubborn on paying the money. Now, that part, as far as avoiding good receivers for years, again, Belichick was signing the Nelson Aguilars of the world and extending the Devontae Parkers and not going after guys that he could have gone after. You can look at the DeAndre Hopkins decision. That's a disaster. Hopkins signed a very team-friendly contract, could have had him for a couple of years, decided not to. How different does this wide receiver core look if you have DeAndre Hopkins? So the Jacoby Myers, the $1 million apart. So I don't think Belichick's error was avoiding wide receivers or trying to get good wide receivers. I think Belichick's two errors were he misevaluated guys in the draft and swung and missed at that position. And then he got stubborn. He didn't want to pay the extra $1 million to Jacoby Myers. He didn't want to go out and sign a DeAndre Hopkins. I think that was where Belichick missed. All right. There's your Patriots takes for the day. Let's jump to the Celtics. Celtics Mavericks segment of the day, getting ready for the NBA Finals. Defensively, what do the Celtics have to do? What will they do? Number one, we all have to embrace this. I believe I said it last week. I might have even said it yesterday. Luka is going to Luka. I walk into this NBA Finals 100% ready to say Luka is going to be good, if not really good. Because guess what? He's a spectacular offensive player. You have to walk into this series believing that Luka is going to score 30 points. He's going to give the Dallas Mavericks 30. That's what you have to plan for. That Luka's greatness on that end of the floor is just going to give this team opportunities and that he's going to score 30 points a night. You go into this series thinking that. But here's the interesting thing. There was the Athletic story on the finals, and it was all about scoring and all of that, right? Luka Doncic is attempting to become the first scoring champion to win a title since 2000. Shaquille O'Neal is the last guy that won a scoring title and an NBA title in the same season. It was back in 2000. As a matter of fact, when you look at the history of scoring champions are 11-8 in the NBA Finals. Michael Jordan accounts for 6 of those 11 wins. So non-Michael Jordan scoring champions are 5-8 in the finals. That's all time. So just because you're the best scorer in the NBA doesn't mean you're going to win a championship. Because unless you're Michael Jordan, you're more likely to lose in the finals than win in the finals, even if you led the NBA in scoring. I really think the Celtics, their goal has to be to limit Kyrie Irving. You can't let Luka get his 30 points while you let Kyrie get 25, 28 points. You can't do that. You can't allow both of these guys to go off. You can't allow Luka to score 30, Kyrie to score 25, and somebody like PJ Washington to score 15. If PJ is scoring 15, Kyrie's scoring 25, Luka's scoring 30, you're going to have a tough time in limiting Dallas's offense. You're going to have a tough time in this series. You can allow Luka to be Luka to a point. You hope that Luka is scoring 30, but he's doing it in an inefficient manner. You don't want him scoring 30 points while dishing out 14 assists and shooting 48% from the floor. That is a disaster. You don't want him to be great, but you can allow him to score. You just got to make sure that you're working on the other guys and limiting them. Kyrie's not getting off. PJ Washington's not getting off, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, I look at Luka Doncic, and he's a lot of times inefficient, right? He takes tough shots. He loves taking tough shots. I said this on 98.5 last week. If people hate locally the shot selection of Jason Tatum, if you had Luka Doncic, you would drive yourself crazy. Doncic takes a lot of step back threes. He takes a lot of pull up threes. He takes a lot of those settle 3-pointers. He takes a lot of those shots. So you've got to try to make Luka as inefficient as possible from the floor. Let him get his 30, but force him to take 20-plus shots to get that 30. Make it tough on Kyrie. Don't let him score 25. Don't allow P.J. Washington to score 15 points. Don't allow Derrick Jones to randomly score 15 points in a night. And I think the Celtics, they will throw numbers at Luka. I think Drew Holiday will defend Luka. Jaylen Brown will defend Luka. I would not be surprised if Jason Tatum defends Luka Doncic at times. I would imagine that the Celtics are going to throw anybody and everybody at Doncic. Make it as difficult as possible. Give him different types of players defending him. Give him Holiday, who's going to continuously dig at the basketball, play physical. Give him Jaylen Brown, who has a little bit more size and physicality than Holiday does, and let him deal with Jaylen Brown. Switch Tatum onto him every once in a while because Tatum has the length that will bother Luka. Make it as hard as possible and throw numbers at him. You have the defenders. I wouldn't throw Derek White at him too often because I think Derek White is going to be on Kyrie duty. But all these other guys, you got to throw numbers at Doncic. You got to throw different looks. You've got to make Doncic take tough threes. You know, I was looking at some stats and notes from ESPN and The Athletic over the last couple of days. Luka Doncic, he has not shot between 37 and 45% from three in any playoff game this year. When Doncic beats that mark, he's 5-0. So when he's lighting it up from three, the Mavericks are almost impossible to beat. When Luka's making his threes, his tough threes especially, it's going to be a long night. However, when Doncic shot under 38% from three so far in the playoffs, when he shoots under 38% from three, which is a pretty high water mark, the Mavericks are 6-5. They are barely above 500 when Luka fails to shoot better than 38% from three. Keep that number in mind. The Celtics have to force Luka into settling for threes, taking tough threes. If Luka shoots 35% from three, the probability of Dallas winning that game is not high at all. You have a great chance of winning that basketball game if you keep Luka hovering around 35, 36% from three. All those percentages mean the difference in the world, from 35% to 38%. If Luka's shooting 38 to 40% from three, you're going to have a really rough night. We're talking about the margins here. Try to force him to take those pull-ups. Try to force him to take those step-back threes. Contest the shots. Make him inefficient. The other thing about the three ball and Doncic, he loves setting up corner threes. The Mavericks love taking corner threes. Doncic made 318 passes this year that led to corner threes. That's 71 more than the second most. The Mavericks attempted more corner threes than any other team in the regular season. And the Mavs are shooting over 40% from the corner three spot this postseason. Doncic loves to find guys in the corner. He loves to drive and kick, manipulate the defense, draw you in, and kick it out to an open teammate in the corner. He makes more passes to the corner than any player in the NBA. The Mavericks take more corner threes than any team in the NBA. And in the playoffs, the Mavericks are shooting over 40% from the corner. So what's that tell you? You've got to try to contain Luka, but you've got to also stay at the corners. You cannot leave the shooters. I repeat, the Celtics cannot leave the corner shooters. If they leave the corner shooters, if they get sucked in by Kyrie or Luka, and they're giving up those corner threes, the Mavericks are going to score points. and they're likely going to score a lot of points. You've got to make sure that you clamp down in the corners. You can't allow P.J. Washington and Derek Jones, and if Tim Hardaway plays a few minutes, you can't allow those guys to get good looks from the corner, because that's what the Mavericks want to do. Here's the good news. The Celtics have been great at defending the corner three. That's the good news. So Dallas's strength from three is something that the Celtics defend very, very well. The Celtics were the best team in the NBA during the regular season defending corner threes. During the regular season, the Celtics allowed teams to shoot 35.2% from the corner. That was the best mark in the NBA, 35.2%. You know what they're allowing in the playoffs? The Celtics are allowing teams to shoot only 23.5% from the corner this postseason. Now, some of that has to do with who they're playing, right? Do those teams have great shooters? Do those teams have creators? This is a different team, different matchups. Luka's better than anybody in the NBA in creating those opportunities. But if the Celtics continue to defend the corner three as well as they have defended the corner three from game one through that series against Indiana, if they continue to do that, that is going to make Dallas try to find different ways to score. If you take that corner three away from their offense, they've got to find another way. And the Celtics have been very good at defending that corner three. You can't allow Luka to collapse the defense. You can't do it. You cannot do it. And I think the Celtics will throw the book at Doncic, not only with players, Holiday, Brown, Tatum. I think you'll see the Celtics switch at times against Doncic. I think you'll see them play drop coverage against Doncic. I think you'll see them play man-to-man. I think they're going to change throughout a game. They're going to probably throw even some zone at the Mavericks and Doncic. They're going to just consistently change it up. All right, I got a few more thoughts on the Celtics defensively against the Mavs. First, let's jump to a couple of super chats. Last 5 minutes in a close game, are you playing Porzingis or Al Horford? I'm playing Porzingis. As long as he's healthy, I'm playing Porzingis. I'm playing my best five. I love Al, but Porzingis is better. And Porzingis is a matchup nightmare. Al, not as much. And we'll get into that a little bit more tomorrow when I look at the Celtics offense versus the Mavericks defense. But let me just tell you this. The pick and pop with Porzingis, and of course you can run pick and pop with Horford, but the pick and pop with Porzingis is much more effective. Because Porzingis, it's much tougher to contest his shot because he's 7'3". And then number two, Porzingis has no issue taking a 26-footer. Horford has to kind of tuck himself up against that three-point line. And that extra space is all the difference in the world. And I also think Porzingis, defensively, he's a better rim protector than Al. So last 5 minutes in a close game, I'm rolling with Porzingis as long as he looks healthy. Kyle Kirk jumps in. I was about to say that Luka's passing is arguably just as dangerous as his scoring. He loves the lobs to Lively and Gafford. Yes. Kyle, I'm so glad you brought this up because it brings up my next point. If you are going to switch and double, if you're going to switch and double Luka, that's going to cause issues on the pick and roll. What Kyle brings up here. Derek Lively is very good on the short roll. He's very good because he can finish in the restricted area. He can finish at the rim, but he's also a very good playmaker for a big man. So if your plan is to switch and then double Luka Doncic, if Luka gets the basketball to Lively, that could be death for you. And remember, if you're doubling Luka, that's forcing your defense to rotate. And if you're rotating, if you get stuck in a bad rotation and Lively kicks it out to a corner for a wide open three, that's just death for you. So I do not think you will see a lot of the Celtics switching and then doubling Luka, because that would open up Luka's playmaking ability. It would also open up Derek Lively's playmaking ability on that short roll. I don't think the Celtics want to mess around with that. You start doubling Luka, that's when the lobs, as Kyle brings up, that's when the lobs come into play. Because Luka draws that double and he lobs it up for Lively. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of doubling on Luka Doncic. I think you're going to see a lot of straight up defense on him. If Luka beats you one-on-one, if he beats you with step back threes, pull up threes, if he beats you with mid-range jump shots that are contested, then by all means you tip your cap to Luka Doncic. What you don't want to do is allow him to start making plays for the other guys, because now you're caught in that, and now Luka is using that to his advantage. That's why I said this series, fans have to be ready. You have to be ready to embrace the idea that Luka's going to score 30 points a night. And there's going to likely be a night he's going to score 40. You have to expect that. And it's not because the Celtics are playing bad defense. It's because A, Luka is just that good. And then B, I think that's going to be part of the Celtics game plan. You're going to throw bodies at Luka. You're going to throw different looks at Luka, but you want him to beat you single-handedly. You want him to play out of his mind and be almost flawless. You want to force him to take tough shots and sap his energy. If you start doubling, you start creating opportunities for the other guys. Now they get going. Then Luka gets going. Now you're dealing with a team that's hot. So I don't think you'll see a lot of doubling on Luka. I think the Celtics are going to tell him, hey, man, if you can hit tough shots, if you can shoot, 50% from the floor and 40% from three and average 30-plus points a night, and also, grab 8 rebounds and dish out 8 to 10 assists, if you have that kind of series with how we can defend you with our defenders, at a certain point, you've got to tip your cap to the guy. But you can't allow everybody to get going. You can't allow the easy lobs. You can't allow the kickouts. You can't allow the wide open threes from the other dudes. You just can't do it. So I would not be surprised, and I expect a decent amount of drop coverage, at least early in this series, because the idea behind drop coverage is that you limit those kick-out threes. You limit the kickouts and you limit the lobs, especially if you have Porzingis in there. Porzingis, again, if you're joining us, Shams Charania broke the news this morning just before we went live that Kristaps is expected to be playing in Game 1. He's expected to be back. Unless he has some kind of a setback, he'll be out there in Game 1. Not sure if he's going to play 20 minutes or 40 minutes. I'd probably lean towards 20. But if you play drop coverage with Porzingis, he has the ability to stay close enough to contest those threes and also not get burned by the lob over and over and over again because of his athleticism and his length. So I think that the Celtics will play a decent amount of drop coverage. They will try to limit those kick-out threes we talked about. They will try to limit those lob plays at the rim for Lively. I'm not as worried about Gafford. I said this yesterday. I think Gafford could be played off the floor in this series because of some matchup issues. And if Dallas tries to switch, he's not nearly as good as Lively is switching against players like wings and guards. So I could see Gafford not play a ton of minutes in this series. I said this yesterday. I'll continue to say it. Maxi Kleber, I think you're going to see more of him than people think. So I think the Celtics are going to try to limit those lob plays at the rim to Lively. I think they're going to try to limit those kick-out threes, and they're going to try to force Luka and Kyrie to beat them in the mid-range. They're going to say, if you guys can hit those mid-range shots, it's very similar to what they did against Indiana. All those mid-range jump shots that Indiana hit, you tip your cap. They still swept Indiana. Even though Indiana shot ridiculously well from the mid-range, the Celtics won that series. By winning 4 straight, they swept them. It's just like when they went against the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Celtics were fine saying, hey, Evan Mobley, if you want to get a bunch of points inside the restricted area, have at it. We don't care if you score 50 points, Evan, because if you score 50 points in the paint, congratulations. We're coming back and we're shooting threes and we're making threes. So we'll give you those twos. And I think this is going to be very similar. I think when you look at how they're going to defend Dallas, they're going to try to force Luka to take tough shots. They're going to try to force Luka and Kyrie. They're going to try to funnel them to the mid-range and force them to make mid-range contested jump shots. And even if they do, the Celtics believe that their offense will create good enough threes that will make up that difference. And we'll get into the Celtics offense tomorrow and tell you how they can create those threes and some of the issues Dallas could have. But it's a very difficult challenge because Luka is so good. You can't be tempted by the bait. You've got to stay disciplined. And if he hits a bunch of 18-footers, good on him. I think that's what the Celtics will do. They will try to force Dallas to beat them in the mid-range. They'll take away those corner threes. They will not overreact to Luka, and they will force Luka and Kyrie to try to be a one-man show at times, right? Going back and forth with a one-man show, the dribble show, and hit those mid-range jump shots. By the way, speaking of Kyrie, Derek White's huge. If Derek White can defend Kyrie and make it uncomfortable for him, that would be great. What I want to see, honestly, is the Kyrie Irving dribbling show. Let him dribble for 18 to 20 seconds. Let him dribble the shot clock out. Great possessions are Kyrie Irving dribbling for 18 seconds and then having to take a tough shot against Derek White. If you have 5 to 8 of those possessions a game, you are ahead. You are ahead. Even if Kyrie makes some of them, you are still ahead. So Derek White, his ability to stay in front of Kyrie, to force tough shots from Irving, that's a big part of this series as well. Because we know that White can challenge those Kyrie Irving floaters. Kyrie shoots with both hands, as we saw during his time here in Boston. White is going to have to make those little float shots by Irving tough, right? He's going to have to contest those floats. The right hand, the left hand, the little 15-footers, the dribble, the step back little dribble, 18-footer. Make those looks tough. Because Kyrie's been fantastic. In the playoffs, he has shot 48.5% from the field. That is the best shooting percentage he's ever had in the playoffs. Best of his playoff career. So Kyrie has been incredibly efficient. You have to make him inefficient. Derek White has to make Kyrie Irving inefficient from the floor. Celtics have to make it tough on Luka. If you force Luka and Kyrie to take tough shots and you turn them into inefficient offensive players, Dallas's offense is going to not be good enough. It's just not going to be good enough. By the way, Kyrie is also shooting over 42% from three. Can't allow it. If Kyrie is shooting 48% from the floor and 42% from three, it's going to be a bad series. So you got to make it tough. Like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to continue to support this channel. It's how we get the eyeballs on the product. Every single thumbs up means a lot. So does every single comment, and every single subscription. Doesn't cost you anything. Takes a second of your time to do those 3 things for this show. If you like or love the content, rate and review Spotify, Apple Pods. All right, that'll do it for Tuesday's show. I'm out of here. Back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Till then, it's the Nick Cattle Show.